The year is 67 BCE. The heart of Rome, the beating pulse of an empire, is on the brink of chaos. The markets in Ostia are silent, the granaries empty, and the streets of the capital are filled with unrest. For weeks, ships laden with grain, oil, and other vital goods have disappeared into the vast Mediterranean, snatched by unseen hands. Rome, master of the known world, finds itself powerless, held hostage not by a foreign army, but by a force far more insidious. They came from the sea, striking in silence, leaving only blood and ashes in their wake. These were no ordinary thieves. The pirates of the late Republic were a terrifying breed, audacious, organized, and utterly ruthless. They didn't just raid merchant ships, they burned coastal towns, captured entire fleets, and even desecrated sacred temples. In one brazen act, they looted the sanctuary of Apollo at Claros, dragging its treasures into the abyss. Their reach extended so far that even the Roman elite couldn't escape. When a young Julius Caesar fell into their hands, they demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver, an unimaginable fortune. Caesar laughed, telling them to demand 50 instead, swearing that once free, he would see them crucified. True to his word, he hunted them down and executed them all. But who were these pirates? How did they rise from obscurity to challenge the greatest power the ancient world had ever known? The answer lies in the cracks of Rome's own system, a system that had grown bloated and corrupt. Endless wars left thousands of soldiers without land or purpose, driving them to the sea in search of survival. Provinces bled dry by Roman taxes turned to piracy as an act of desperation or defiance. Even Rome's allies played a part, secretly selling weapons and ships to the very pirates they publicly condemned. By the time the Roman Senate finally realized the scale of the threat, the pirates had created an empire of their own. Their bases, hidden among the jagged cliffs of Cilicia, were fortresses, protected by natural harbors and treacherous terrain. Their fleets moved with military precision, striking where Rome was weakest. At their height, they didn't just disrupt trade, they controlled it. They imposed tolls on merchants, decided who could sail safely, and even held the Republic's food supply hostage. In 67 BCE, Rome had no choice but to act. The Senate granted extraordinary powers to one man, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, or Pompey the Great. What followed was one of the most dramatic military campaigns in Roman history. In just 3 months, Pompey annihilated the pirate threat, sweeping across the Mediterranean with a fleet so vast it seemed to blot out the horizon. But victory came at a cost. The campaign marked the rise of military dictatorships in Rome, a key step toward the fall of the Republic itself. This is the untold story of the pirates who dared to defy Rome. Not just criminals, but symbols of rebellion, desperation, and the fragility of even the mightiest empires. Their legacy isn't just one of terror. It's a reflection of how greed, power, and neglect can create enemies in the shadows. Join me as we uncover the rise and fall of the pirates who nearly brought Rome to its knees. This is their story, and it's one you won't soon forget. The Mediterranean. To Rome, it was Mare Nostrum, our sea. But in reality, it was anything but. By the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE, Rome ruled much of the land surrounding these waters, yet at sea, it was not the Romans who held power. That power belonged to the pirates. They were not savages or mindless raiders. They were something far worse, organized, strategic, and utterly ruthless. Their fleets numbered in the thousands. Their bases stretched from Cilicia and Asia Minor to the Aegean Islands, Crete, and even the coasts of Italy and Spain. They didn't just rob ships, they dominated the trade routes, held entire cities hostage, and amassed wealth that rivaled kings. And Rome? Rome had let it happen. For centuries, the seas had been patrolled by powerful navies, the Carthaginians, the Greeks, and the kingdoms of the Hellenistic world. But Rome's relentless wars had shattered these powers, leaving a dangerous vacuum. Imagine a young fisherman in Cilicia. His father once traded with Greek merchants, his village thrived, and his people were respected. Then came Rome. War after war bled the region dry. The taxes became unbearable, the trade routes collapsed, and suddenly, there was no way to survive. Except one, the sea. And so, across Cilicia, the Aegean, Crete, and beyond, thousands of desperate men took to the waves, not as traders, but as predators. But this wasn't just about survival. By the 2nd century BCE, piracy had become a full-fledged empire. Cilicia was its capital, a fortress of hidden coves, labyrinthine caves, and towering cliffs that no Roman fleet could penetrate. Here, piracy wasn't a crime. It was a way of life. Their ships were not clumsy rafts but sleek, fast warships built for speed and ambush. Their fleets operated with military precision, striking targets with such coordination that even Rome's generals were baffled. Their economy was sophisticated, fueled by stolen goods, slave trading, and ransoms so lucrative that even Roman aristocrats secretly paid for pirate protection. They even had a society of their own, elected leaders, fortified settlements, and a network that stretched across the Mediterranean. They weren't just attacking Rome, they were challenging it. At first, Rome dismissed them. The Senate, locked in its own political battles, ignored the warnings. That mistake nearly destroyed them. The pirates became bolder, raiding coastal towns and ransacking temples. They stormed the sanctuary of Apollo at Claros, desecrating one of the most sacred sites in the ancient world. They didn't just attack ships, they attacked entire cities. And then came their boldest move yet. They kidnapped Julius Caesar. It was supposed to be an ordinary voyage. A 25-year-old Julius Caesar, still a nobody in the grand scheme of Rome, was traveling across the Aegean. He had no army, no great power, just ambition. But to the pirates who captured him, he was just another noble ripe for ransom. They demanded 20 talents of silver for his release, a fortune beyond imagination. Caesar? He laughed. He called them fools, told them they should demand 50 talents instead. The pirates were amused. This Roman was different. He didn't grovel. He lived among them as if he were their equal, joining their games, reciting poetry, and even joking that, once free, he would return to crucify them all. They laughed. They shouldn't have, because the moment Caesar was freed, he did exactly what he promised. He raised a fleet, hunted them down, and personally oversaw their crucifixion. But, in a rare act of mercy, he ordered their throats slit first, a small kindness before their bodies were nailed to crosses. Caesar's revenge became legendary, but his capture was just one story in a much larger crisis. Because by 67 BCE, piracy had brought Rome to its knees. The pirates didn't just disrupt trade. They didn't just ransom nobles. They blockaded Rome itself. Ostia, the heart of Rome's grain supply, fell under pirate control. Imagine the chaos. The markets of Rome went silent. The grain shipments from Egypt? Gone. The people? Starving. Riots broke out. The Senate panicked. Rome, the greatest power in the world, was helpless against an enemy that had no capital, no borders, no king. Wealthy Romans refused to travel. Even senators were captured, dragged from their villas, held for ransom like common merchants. Some paid. Some didn't. Those who didn't were never seen again. The Republic was on the brink of collapse. And finally, Rome realized the truth. The pirates weren't just raiders. They were an army. They were winning. And Rome, if it didn't act fast, was going to lose. The Senate had no choice. They turned to one man, Pompey the Great. They gave him unlimited power, an authority never before granted. 500 warships, 120,000 men. A blank check to do whatever it took. This was not a campaign of diplomacy. This was extermination. Pompey's strategy was merciless. He divided the Mediterranean into zones, isolating the pirates, cutting off their escape routes, and crushing them one by one. Cilicia, the very heart of the pirate empire, fell in weeks. The hidden coves, the impenetrable strongholds, the safe harbors, burned to the ground. The pirate empire, which had taken decades to build, was dismantled in 3 months. Thousands were slaughtered, but not all, because Rome did something unexpected. Instead of executing every last pirate, Pompey offered a deal. Surrender, and you would be resettled as farmers in Roman territory. Many accepted. Rome knew that total extermination would only create new problems. So, they absorbed their enemies instead. By the end of 67 BCE, piracy was over. The Mediterranean was finally under Rome's control. But victory had a cost. This wasn't just a war against pirates. This was a turning point in Rome itself. Because in giving Pompey near-dictatorial power, Rome had set a precedent. Soon, other generals, men like Julius Caesar, would demand the same absolute authority. And one day, Rome wouldn't just fight pirates. It would fight itself. And in that fight, the Republic, the very system that had ignored the pirates for so long, would die. Because piracy was never just about the sea. It was about what happens when those in power let the cracks grow too deep. And Rome? Rome had ignored the warning. And one day, like the pirates, it too would fall.